Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. On today's video tutorial, guys, we are going to be tackling question 2.1. And question 2.1 deals with your maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world, right? We are going to be simplifying a fraction in question 2.1.4, right? We are going to be dealing with a probability scale in question 2.1.5, and the rest of the questions, guys, we are just going to be interpreting information that is given to us in our NXJ. Before we get started with today's video tutorial, guys, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on that notification bell so that you get notified every single time I upload a new video tutorial, guys. And also, don't forget to give this video tutorial a huge thumbs up because that really goes a long way in helping the channel grow and in helping the channel to reach more learners that want to better their mathematics marks. Also, guys, if you really appreciate the content that I am bringing to you guys here, right, and you want to keep the lights on in this channel, please also click on that thank you button. I will really appreciate that. Okay, so without any further ado, guys, let's get started with today's video tutorial. So like I mentioned, we are going to be tackling question 2.1. And like I said in my intro, that in question 2.1, guys, we are basically going to be basically interpreting, right, this map that is given to us, right? And we're going to be using it to answer the questions that are given to us. Okay. So before we even have a look at this question, let's just quickly analyze what is going on in this map. Okay, so we are basically given like a map that shows a route, okay, that was basically taken by women, right, for the V Women's Mini Marathon. Okay, so this is obviously a map that shows basically the route that the ladies that took part in this marathon took, right? And then we see that in this map that is given to us, right, we are given a key here, right? So here we are given a key. Actually, let me just highlight that. We are given a key, right, that basically tells us that those black dots here basically represents the kilometers that have basically passed. For example, if we start there and then we go and we go, that basically tells us that at this point here we have basically or the women have would have ran 2 kilometers, right? From that point to that point, they would have ran 3 kilometers. From that point to that point, they would have ran 4 kilometers. From that point to that point, they would have ran 5 kilometers, and so on and so forth, right? So basically, we see that at each dot, that from there to there, it basically represents this dot basically represents or they put a dot, right? So they put that black dot every time the ladies, or every time you would have passed 1 kilometer. So from there to there, 1 kilometer would have passed, right? And then you add another kilometer, you would have, and then that's 2 kilometers. Then you add another kilometer, that's 3 kilometers. So that basically shows us the distance from there to that marker. So the distance between each black dot is 1 kilometer. Okay, right. And then we're also given the key there. We see that basically that mark there, if we see that key there on our map, that represents the water stations, right? When we see that lady, that circle with the lady, so that one there, that basically shows the female toilets, okay, because that looks like it's wearing a dress if we were to basically zoom it in. So let's see if we zoom it in, right? So it's a female toilet because it is a V Women's Mini Marathon. Okay, so we see that represents that. And then we also see that sign there basically represents an ambulance. Okay, so we see that this is obviously, like I mentioned, this is basically the route that the woman will basically take in this mini marathon. And the date of the marathon was on the 6th of June, and it starts at 2 p.m. Right, we're also given a key here, right, that the K basically means it's 1000 meters, so like 1 kilometer, because we know that 1 kilometers equal to 1,000 meters, right? And we also see that if we see that line with those horizontal solid lines there in between, that basically means that it's a railway line. So we see that, okay, that part there is the railway line. And we also see here at the bottom left, they also told us that, or the key or the map tells us that the use of bicycles during the race is not allowed. So people are not allowed to use bicycles, or the ladies are not allowed to use any bicycles during the race. Okay, so we've basically analyzed the annexure A of this map that is basically given to us, right? And I think we're ready to have a look at the questions. Okay, so let's have a look at question 2.1. It says Busisiwe participated in a V Women's mini marathon. Okay, annexure A shows the route for the mini marathon. So, like I mentioned, this annexure A, right? This map here just shows us this route of this mini marathon. Okay, so use annexure A and the information above to answer the questions that follow. Question 2.1.1. Write down the starting time of the mini marathon using the 24-hour format. Okay, so when we're using the 24-hour format, for example, if you want to basically communicate the fact that maybe this marathon starts at 9 at night, okay, we're not gonna say PM, we're not gonna say that. But when we're using the 24-hour format, right, we are basically gonna say, if for example this marathon was starting at like 9 at night, then we were just going to say 21:00. Okay, then we know, okay, this marathon or this mini marathon is actually starting at 9 at night. So all the time when they ask you to use the 24-hour format, you take that into consideration. Okay, if it's 1 o'clock, it's 1300 hours. If it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 1400 hours. If it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 1500 hours. If it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 16,000 hours, right? 1600, please, 100 hours. If it's 5 o'clock, 1700 hours, and so on and so forth, because we are using what? We are using the 24-hour format. Okay, so now going back to the question, if they ask us to write down the starting time of the mini marathon using the 24-hour format, you have a look at your annexure A, right? And then we see what time does this mini marathon start, and we see that the mini marathon starts at 2 p.m. Right, so if it starts at 2 p.m. and we need to basically use the 24-hour format, right, when we basically write that starting time in using the 24-hour format, it's basically just going to be 1400 hours. Okay, so I'm going to write that 14. So question 2, right? So the starting time using the 24-hour format is that 1400 hours. So that is our starting time. And basically for giving your answer like that, you will just get your 2 marks. Right? Let us go to the next question. Determine the number of places where an ambulance can be found, right? So we can basically see with question 2.1.1, question 2.1.2, question 2.1.3, we are basically at this point just interpreting this map that is given to us. Okay, so we are just interpreting this map. We're basically having a look at the keys that are given to us, and we're using that to answer the questions that are given. Okay, so let's see. This question says that determine the number of places where an ambulance can be found. So we have a look at our route or our map, right? And then we look at the key for an ambulance, right? We see that we will know that an ambulance can be found when we see that symbol there, right? So we need to basically move along this route and see how many of those symbols can we find. Okay, so it's 1, all right? So it's 1. We see that there's an ambulance symbol. 2, okay, go along the route, go along the route. 3, go along the route. 4, go along the route. 5, right, along the route. 6, along the route. 7, and the last one is 8. Okay, so we can see from this route that the number of places where an ambulance can be found is 8 places. All right, so here as well, you'll get just your 2 marks for giving that answer like that. Okay, question 2.1.3 states which mode of transport is not allowed on the mini marathon route. Okay, so which mode of transport is not allowed in the mini marathon route? All right, so if you had a look at my transport tariff video, I'll put a thumbnail here on the top right. I basically explained what it means when they talk about a mode of transport. Okay, so a mode of transport, guys, right, is a type of transport that people use to take them from point A to point B, right? If you're talking about a mode of transport, we're talking about a taxi, we're talking about a private car, we're talking about a bus, we're talking about a cruise ship, we're talking about an airplane, we're talking about a bicycle. So those are the different types of modes of transport, right? But in the context of this question, right, they're asking us, state which mode of transport is not allowed on the mini marathon. So here, guys, you're not just gonna allow your mind to go wild. You're gonna have a look at the map that is given to us, and you're gonna see, have they basically mentioned anything about a certain mode of transport that is not allowed in this mini marathon, right? And we can see that here they basically said that. So bottom left, they said the use of a bicycle during the race is not allowed. So a bicycle is a mode of transport because people do. Some people actually use bicycles to take them from point to B. So that is a mode of transport, right? So we can see that they said that the use of a bicycle during the race is not allowed. So that is exactly what we are going to write down. Question 2.1.3. And then same thing here, right? For just giving the answer that the use of a bicycle is not allowed, you'll get your 2 marks. Right? Happiness. Let's go to question 2.1.4. The distance of a standard marathon is 42.2 kilometers, right? Determine in simplified form what fraction of a standard marathon the V women's mini marathon is. Okay, so we can see that here, okay, we want to basically determine in simplified form what fraction. All right, so already with this question, it's actually telling us how we need to approach this question. We want the fraction of a standard marathon, the V women's mini marathon is. Okay, so we know that, okay, we're given the information that the distance of a standard marathon, okay, generally the distance for that is like 42.2 kilometers, right? So that's fine. But in terms of this V women's mini marathon, okay, the distance or the route, the total distance that these ladies will basically run in this marathon is how much? So we firstly need to determine that, okay? Once we determine how many kilometers this V women's mini marathon is, right? We're going to take that route and then we're going to divide it by your standard marathon and we're going to basically take it from there. Let's firstly determine how many kilometers are these ladies running in this V women's mini marathon. Okay, let's just have a look. So like I mentioned when we were starting the video tutorial, I explained that at each of this dot, this dots basically shows you that from the start to this point, 1 kilometer was traveled. From there to there, between these two black circles, 1 kilometer is traveled. Between these two black circles, 1 kilometer is traveled, right? But in total, how many kilometers is this V women's mini marathon? Okay, so we already know that from there it's 1 kilometer, from there to there is 2, from there to there it's 3, it's 4, 5 kilometers will be traveled when you get to that point. 6 kilometers will be traveled when you get to that point. Let me actually use my beautiful laser pen there, right? So 6 kilometers will be traveled when you get to there. 7 kilometers will be traveled when you get to there. So when the ladies get there, already 8 kilometers will be traveled. There it will be 9 kilometers, right? And then, right, what does this say? Have a look at that. That says that it's 1 kilometers to the finish line. So if you're already at this point and you want to get to the finish line, that means that, right, this section here, right, is equal to 1 kilometer, right? So if we know that that's already 9 kilometers, right, and we know that that part there till the finish line is 1 kilometers, that means that in total, right, right, the route, right, in kilometers for this V Women's Mini Marathon is that 9 kilometers by plus that 1 kilometer. Okay, so this is question 2.1.4, and it's A. Okay, so like I mentioned, the total kilometers for the route is equal to that 9 kilometers, right, plus your 1 kilometer. Okay, and then, so that basically tells us that the V Women's Mini Marathon is 10 kilometers, right? Then the question basically tells us we want to determine in simplified form what fraction of a standard marathon the V Women's mini marathon is, right? So we want to determine what fraction is it, right? So the first thing that I'm actually going to choose to do, I'm going to first choose to basically convert these kilometers into meters, okay? So we know that when we're basically using our table of conversions, or remember this, right? We know that when you go from kilometers to meters, right, we basically multiply by 1,000, all right? Or we know that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. But anyway, this is also just given to us here in our information that the K is equal to 1,000 meters. So we already know that, okay, 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters, right? So I'm going to start off by just converting these 10 kilometers into meters, right? And then, right, so it's just going to be 10,000. I'm going to convert that to meters. So 10 kilometers, just going to multiply it by 1,000, which will give us 10,000 meters, right? And then, so this is your V Women's Mini Marathon. I'll put an M there, right? And then I'm also going to convert the kilometers for a standard marathon, right? So for this particular marathon, the V Women's Mini Marathon, it's 10 kilometers, right? But I want to change that into meters. So I'm going to say it's a 10,000 meters, right? And then with any standard marathon, the kilometers that they usually run is like 42.2 kilometers. So I'm also going to convert that into meters, right? Because I want everything of mine to be in meters. So I'm going to convert that 42.2 kilometers into meters. Remember, when you convert to meters, you multiply it by 1,000. So if you take that 42.2 and you multiply it by 1,000, you will get 42,200 meters, right? And then remember the question. So this is just a standard marathon. The question wants us to determine in simplified form what fraction of the standard marathon the V Women's Mini Marathon is, right? So we basically, it wants to determine, so we basically going to take that 10,000 and you divide it by that 42,200 that we've just obtained, right? Because obviously we have our units. We have converted our units to be the same and they're both in meters, right? So if you basically divide those two, you'll find that you get 50 over 211. Okay. So if you basically had to basically convert this into a percentage, the V Women's Mini Marathon is like 23% of like a standard marathon, right? But in this case, they just wanted you to basically write it down in simplified form and just leaving your answer as 50 over 211 would be okay. Or, right, we can also solve this question like this, right? You can solve this question like this. You can literally just take the 10 kilometers, right? Actually, I forgot to write units. I'm always stressing units. Meters, meters. Remember, it's meters, meters. It cancels like that, right? You already understand that. And you just have your units, right? So 50 over 211 is a fraction, right? That is in its simplified form, okay? So we don't have to write it down as a decimal because they said what fraction of a standard marathon the V women's mini marathon is, right? So we want it in fraction form so we don't have to write it as a decimal. Okay, so like I mentioned, we could also continue to basically we could have also solved this question like this. Let me just show you quickly how they would mark this question here. They'll give you just 2 marks for converting that 10 kilometers to meters, right? So you get 2 marks for that. Seeing that you need to say 10,010 multiplied by 1 and then obviously your final answer. Then you'll get a mark for showing that you take that 10,000 and you divide it by 42,200, you'll get another mark. Then you'll get another mark for obviously just leaving your answer as a fraction in simplified form, which is 50 over 211, right? So that is basically for 4 marks, right? And then I also mentioned that we can also solve it like this, right? Because another person will be like, but why do we need to like multiply it by 1,000? What if I just decided I'm just going to take that 10 kilometers, and I'm going to divide it by that 42.2, right? So if you take your 10 kilometers and you divide it by 42.2, you'll get your answer as 5 over 21.1. But we cannot leave our answer there in the denominator. So our denominator is the number there in our bottom. The number in the bottom of our fraction, that is our denominator. We cannot leave that number as 21.1. Okay, right? So what do we need to do for us to basically get rid of that 0.1, right? You basically need to now continue to multiply both the numerator as well as the denominator by 10. Why are we multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 10? It's because we basically want to get rid of that point 1. So because it's just one digit after the comma, that basically tells us that you need to multiply both the top and the bottom number by just the one digit number, that is the 10. If it was a 21.12, then we would know that actually we need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 100. Okay, but because it's just one digit after the comma, that just tells us that we need to just multiply it by a 10. If there was 21.12, then we would multiply both the top and the bottom by a 100. If there was 21.123, then we'd multiply both the top and the bottom by 1000. Okay, so the numbers that we get after your comma basically tells us what we basically need to do to both the numerator and the denominator to get rid of that comma. And we need to always multiply by like a 10, 100, 1,000, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if you multiply the 5 by 10, you'll get that it's 50. If you multiply the 21.1 by 10, you will also get 211. All right. So that is also another way that we can do it. And we can see here that already our fraction is in its simplified form. We cannot have a fraction where there's like decimals, right? We need to get rid of that if they're asking us to get our fraction in simplified form. Okay, so I hope that basically makes sense, right? To everyone. Okay, so you can basically apply it, you can approach this question like this, right? The reason why I decided to approach question 2.1.4 like this, because with this approach, it basically gets rid of that point or that comma that we have here in the denominator, and it just makes our life really simple because it takes us straight to our answer. But if you don't see it like that, and you still see that, okay, I can still just divide the 10 kilometers by the 42.2, that's also fine because the units are the same, right? So they will cancel. But all that you need to understand that here in the denominator, we've got a problem. We cannot leave our answer as 21.1 because there's that decimal there. We cannot leave our answer in decimal form there. So we need to find a way that we get rid of that 0.1. And for us to get rid of a decimal, you either need to multiply by 10, 100, 1,000. And what tells us what we need to multiply by is the numbers that we have after our comma, right? Or our points, okay? And that number here, we see that it's just one number. So that tells us that we just need to multiply by 10. Also, you can also just play around with your calculator, see if you multiply by 10, is it getting rid of the decimals in the denominator? If you multiply it by 1,000, is it getting rid of the decimals, right? If you can't remember. Okay, so that is basically our final answer. So I hope that I cleared that one for you guys. Let's go on to question B. Give one reason why the V Women's Mini Marathon is called a mini marathon. Okay, so this question, guys, is very simple. They already told us in question 2.1.4 here, this information, right? They told us that the distance of a standard marathon is 42.2 kilometers. But what we see about this V Women's Mini Marathon is that the distance is like less than half, right, of the standard for a marathon. Okay, because with this V Women's Mini Marathon, they just travel, I mean, they just ran 10 kilometers. But a standard for marathons is like 42.2. So we can see that with this V Women's Mini Marathon, they ran even way less than half of the standard. Okay, so the reason why then they will call it a mini marathon is because the kilometers that are ran in this marathon are way less than the standard marathon. Okay, it's like almost close to less than a half. Okay, so we can write that as an answer because the kilometers that are ran in this marathon are way less than the standard marathon. Okay, so let's write that down. This is question 2.1.4b. Okay, so because the kilometers that are ran in this marathon are way less than the standard marathon. Okay, so you'll literally just get 2 marks for giving that answer. Right? Let's go to question 2.1.5. Choose the answer and write only the letter, right? So if you decide that your answer is A, you'll just write 2.1.5A. Okay, but you know, with me, when I give my explanations, I'm going to go into detail so that you guys understand what is expected from you. Okay, so choose the answer and write only the letter next to the question number. What is the probability of a runner crossing the railway line during the mini? Okay, so it says the probability, sorry, not what is the probability. The probability of a runner crossing the railway line during the mini marathon is it definite? Is it 0%? Is it 100%? Before we can even answer this question, guys, we need to understand the whole concept of probability. So we know in probability, guys, in probability, we usually calculating, right? What is the likelihood of a particular event happening? Remember, when we calculate probability, we always calculate probability is equal to your favorable outcome divided by your total outcomes. But we don't have to really worry about that. That's just me giving you a backstory to what is required from you here, right? So we know how to calculate probability. And there's also another important concept that we've basically learned in probability that is called the probability scale, right? So with the probability scale, we can basically remember this. I'm just giving you guys a recap so you know what's happening when you calculate probability. If there's zero chance of something happening, we know that on the scale, it'll just be a 0% chance, right? And we know that, okay, it's just impossible, right, for that event to occur, right? For example, what is the probability of seeing a house fly? Okay, we know it's impossible, so we can just say 0%. Okay, so on the probability scale, if maybe we get like a probability of like something happening and it's like 25%, then we know that okay, the probability of that event happening is probably a poor chance. Okay, if we get a probability and we get maybe the probability of something happening, like for example flipping a coin, we know that okay, the probability of getting a head or a tail when we flip a coin is a fair chance. Okay, right? So it's 50%. Okay, then we calculate probability and you probably get like 75%. That basically means that, okay, there's a good chance of that event happening. Okay. And lastly, if you get like a probability and you get 100% or you get 1/1, then we know that, okay, the chance of that happening or that event happening is certain. Okay. But this is just me just giving you just extra information that you can always have at the back of your head when you're looking at questions like this, right? So now let's go back to the question. But yeah, the probability of a runner crossing the railway line during the mini marathon is what? Is it a definite chance, meaning 100% chance? Is it a 0% chance, which is impossible? Is it a 100% chance, which is still definite, right? So what is it? Is it A, B, or C? So let's just have a look at our mini marathon routes that is basically given to us. What is the probability of a runner basically crossing the railway line? If you have a look at this, where is this railway line? It's here. It's very far from the route that these ladies will be on. Okay, so we can see that actually the probability of the runners even crossing that, they don't even cross it. They don't go like that, right? They are literally almost like close. I could say parallel, but when something is parallel, when lines are parallel to each other, that line is supposed to be also like the distances need to be equidistant, right? But I'm just going to use parallel just for the context of this example to just show you that this is there and this is there, and the chances of these two meeting, okay, is zero, impossible, right? The runners will not cross the railway line. Okay, they go like that. Okay, they don't even come close to the railway line. So by using the probability scale, we can just see that the probability of a runner crossing the railway line during the mini marathon as they are busy running to get to the finish line is zero. Zero. Impossible. Right? So when we write our answer, we can just write question. I'll write it here. Question 1, 2.1.5, and you can just write B. There's a 0% chance. It's impossible. Can't happen. Okay. So that is basically it for today's video tutorial, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was super informative. I hope I was able to break down everything for you guys and explain everything in detail. Also, I've been reading your comments and I see all the lovely messages that I get from everyone and every learner. So I really appreciate that. And also I see the constructive criticism that I get from some learners as well. Some learners don't appreciate me constantly repeating something. So yeah, so I think maybe just I'll because I like to emphasize just to ensure that my point is being carried across. So maybe just repeating twice is what I'll do. Try not to repeat things like 5 times just to accommodate everyone. But I think also emphasizing is very important because I do see the learners that are in my channel, they appreciate me going into depth in all my explanations and also emphasizing certain points. So I'll just try to maybe repeat twice just so that it doesn't become a bit annoying. But thank you so much for all the love and support that I've been getting on my channel, and thank you so much for also the 11k subscribers, guys. Please keep sharing the channel with your friends. Please keep supporting, and I'll see you guys on my next upload. In my next upload, guys, we are going to be tackling question 2.2. We are still going to be analyzing a map, so please make sure that you've got your past papers printed out because this one actually needs us to be measuring things on the map. So you can also just print out just an extra B so that we can just interact and engage, and you can be there and measuring and doing all these lovely things. Okay, so guys, I'll see you guys on my next video tutorial. That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, guys.